All right, e4. Many options. Many options. I'm gonna go for the old French, the tried and trusted. Well, the starting moves are easy enough, and I tell you, it's always a choose your own adventure here. So I've got the French, and I've got someone playing this, which means that after this, the queen is gonna end up there. It's like, how could I not play this, right? You want to draw your opponent's queen out for the most part because you play moves like this and you gain time attacking the queen. So this should not be too, I don't know, too earth-shattering. We get our knight out. It's attacking the enemy queen. And depending where the queen goes, we could get more moves that bother the queen. Let's play some lounge playlist here. Classic stuff. All right, he's having to think here, which is good. He's wondering where to put that thing. These moves, I would say, make the most sense just because they're the most out of the way. But nevertheless, after queen here, I'm being checked. I have a lot of ways to get out of it. c6, knight c6, bishop d7, knight d7, knight d7, queen d7, king e7, b5, right? Obviously, so many moves. Queen d7. b5 I would rule out. c6 for the most part, I would rule out just because I can get a piece developed here, so why not? I like bishop d7. There's a few reasons here why bishop d7 could be a little bit awkward, like especially with this pawn, but I still think it's hard to say no to bishop d7. Knight d7 is a very nice alternative, but I'll pick the most obvious move. I mean, it hits the queen, it gets developed. Why not? Okay, so he goes bishop b5. I don't really want to take it because then suddenly I get checked, my pawn is attacked. So not really too interested in that. Here, I think a6 could be played, but what I believe is true here is that white is going to take this next turn. I think white's going to take it. So a move like a6 encourages this, but it did seem like it was maybe going to happen anyway. So I'm not so sure how useful that is. So maybe it's time to just get developed instead. Bishop d6. If bishop takes, then the knight will capture back. For the most part, we'll just ignore it and castle. So yeah, like I said, I mean, he takes, and I'm happy to take back. Now I've got 3 pieces out. My opponent's got 1 and a weird queen on the side of the board. So we're going to castle. Still, I think, you know, we don't have an overwhelming position at all. It's very, very equal. But you have 2 jobs as the guy playing the black pieces. You have to first equalize, because you start off a little bit worse. So white goes first. And then you have to win. So I would say we've done the equalizing. And against someone your level, equalizing is still an accomplishment. It's a good thing. So yeah, castling next is very important. I mean, not only is it just a safe move, safe idea to execute, but we want to get out of there. Okay, he's castling, we're castling. Nice and easy. Why bishop d6, not bishop e7? Bishop d6 to me looks like a better diagonal. More space, controls the center. Bishop e7 is a move you want to do when, you know, the bishop might get harassed or you need to block, interpose a pin or something. Okay, so he goes queen over to h4. So a lot of queen moves. 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of queen moves. And the move d4 to take the center was not played. And it's really got me wondering why. Because it seems like it would be a good move. So queen here. There's going to be little to no threats without the light squared bishop. The fact that the bishop is traded off, it's like, what is white going to threaten here? Knight g5 and what? That's not even a threat. It's like, you want to go here and get rid of my knight? Well, my other knight's going to recapture. So it's like, I don't see any threats coming up. Also, knight g5, h6 is super easy to repel the knight. So I'm not that concerned about the position here. The question is, how do we want to proceed? I'm definitely looking at h6, but I don't think we need to play it now. I think we can wait. Rook e8 to play e5 looks kind of nice. Bishop e7 to like maybe do something on the queen. It seems silly to me because like he's ready to move the queen again easily. There's no big threat I can move this knight to create. So those all seem pretty senseless. So here I would definitely make a move that controls the center in some way, whether it's rook e8 to prepare this, c5, e5, just some pawn move, something that lends itself to controlling the center. I think I'm gonna go e5. Most standard move. Rook e8 is a really nice move next for many reasons. It opens up the f8 square, which doesn't look important, but playing knight f8, knight g6 is really nice. Bishop f8, you'd be surprised, is also nice, but it's not just playing those moves, it's the ability to play those moves. So if I play this, let's say white plays d3, I go h6. Suddenly I'm not scared of this sack anymore because I have bishop f8, bishop g7, and I'm immediately defending myself. But if my rook's on f8, I have to admit, I am a little bit scared if bishop takes h6. Whether or not that's rational, it does bother me a little more. So rook e8 is nice for that reason. Also, if e4 to hit the knight, knight g5 hits the pawn, what are we saying about that? Kind of looks like a problem. h6, knight takes e4. Knight takes. Yeah, I don't think we're doing enough there. So probably it would be a move like this. Rook e8. This move so close to working, and maybe it does work, but it's very close to just losing the pawn with like knight there, so wasn't a big fan of that. Okay, pawn up. Definitely looking at h6 here. Really like that move in general. It's a nice, easy game so far. I think h6 is good. We want to control this square. And like I said, this move just does not scare me in the slightest. There's no light squared bishop, and I have bishop f8 if I need. So h6 looks fine. Controls this square. A lot of pieces want to use it. Probably we'll see a simple move like knight to c3 from my opponent. But no, we see bishop takes h6, and I'm so excited that we're seeing it. Number one, because it doesn't work. So just as a chess player, I'm happy to see mistakes from my opponent. But number two, I think that this still, despite everything I've said, and obviously you wouldn't have known everything I just said as reassurance, so you might have been afraid of bishop takes h6 yourself. But truthfully, things like bishop h6 are, number one, not threatening at all without a light squared bishop. But number two, as soon as your rook's out of the way, you feel a lot safer because this maneuver, I tell you, like the two things that always defend against bishop takes h6 sacrifice, bishop f8 g7 and knight h7. Those are the two most common defensive maneuvers. Like no matter which players you're watching, if you see top players and they get hit with bishop h6, they're most likely looking to hit you with these ideas next. Like that's just like always the defensive procedure. So bishop f8 and bishop g7 looks fantastic. Knight h7 stops knight g5 and plans to get the queen out. Benefits of both. Knight h7 goes for a queen trade, which will always win you the game if you can achieve it. But it does allow the e4 square to get utilized, like rook e4, rook g4. Both of the moves are completely fine, but kind of explaining the difference. And bishop here allows this check, but you immediately play bishop g7, and then you'll move your knight next turn, and again, try to get some trades in the position. So those are the two options. I kind of talked about bishop f8, so I feel a little more inclined to go for that, but really if I'm thinking about this position, knight h7 is the best just because the e-pawn stays defended, and the only thing we need to calculate is rook e4, because guess what? That's a big threat. So knight h7, there's no knight g5, there's no queen g5, no queen g6, nothing. So knight h7 is really strong. Rook e4 threatens checkmate in a couple moves, so we do need to deal with that. How do we do it? I'm looking at f5 there. Then the rook would go to h4. You know, and although you can bring pieces over to defend, still a little dicey. Knight h7, rook e4, queen f6. And, you know, rook g4, king h8, and maybe queen h5 to keep the queen on the board. And the reason I like this a little bit more for black is white's got 3 pieces that they're attacking with. There's no way that they'll mate you with only 3 pieces. So I like knight h7. I think the next move is going to be queen f6. So even if this happens, we can slide our king in the corner. There's no mate anymore. And if the queens trade, you can be sure that you're going to be in a better position because you're up a piece. Don't forget, the only reason white's enjoying this attacking position is they sacked. They sacked. So you'll definitely be better if you can trade queens. That goes for every single time. So I'm probably going here, here, and maybe rook g8. So we'll see what white wants to do. Obviously, they played this move, sacrificed without thinking too far ahead, and that's fair. It's intuitive sacrifice. You do read about how those sacrifices are the best ones, the toughest to handle. You can get some quick wins like that, but obviously if you're against someone who kind of knows what they're doing, then it'll be tough. So h4, reasonable move, but guess what? I'm moving quickly here. Very, very quick. The queen is attacked, so you got to leave. And if you go back here, I think it's obvious. It should be obvious to everyone that if you see a move like this, this sacrifice was nonsense. Same with queen h5. If white goes queen h5, black goes queen g6, guess what? I've effectively trapped the queen. I know it's like not winning the queen, but I'm winning the queen being traded. That's my prize. And if the queen's trade, we know the position is going to be winning. And he decides to take anyway, so that's obviously a good sign. Thank you very much. Now we need to take here. Queen's traded, so this is just gravy now. And well, I know this wasn't the most dangerous sacrifice by white, but be honest, it would have scared you a little bit, right? Hopefully the way I handled it was like textbook enough that you feel like you could repeat it. Because anytime bishop h6 happens, bishop f8, knight h7, like one of those two defensive ideas will be correct. That's it. It'll be correct. It's always scary to have somebody sack against you, but if you always play your chess games so that you never play h6 when there's a bishop there, you never want to see that sacrifice happen, and you always avoid it, don't even let it, exist as a possibility, you're going to be playing subpar moves. You're going to be playing worse chess as a result. Chess played properly means that, yeah, most of the time you allow these sacrifices to be played or at least threatened because they're not actually good. And if you keep playing like you're afraid of them all the time, you're just going to be playing worse and worse moves. And you're certainly not going to be playing the objective best move. So it's definitely a bad strategy to just be scared of something at a principle and always make a point to avoid it in your games. Because obviously at some point the best move will, it might be h6. And if you're not willing to play it because you're just scared, then that's a bit unfortunate. Okay, this is a nice move by my opponent. I like it. So obviously a threat here. I'm probably going to move the bishop to guard the pawn, and I'll play a6 next. It's a weird position where, moving the rooks really sucks. It hangs a pawn everywhere. You go c3. Guess what? He wants to play b4. That's obvious. Let's kick the knight out. And the knight has to go here. e4 is hanging. Lots of good things about this position here, but I'm seeing this knight, and I'm not really sure I'm convinced. And e4. Knight c4, bishop b6, and we're hitting f2. So even though we lose our e-pawn, we're not only up a rook, but also hitting the f2 pawn, so pretty comfortable. A nice move, hits our bishop, but we go here, and I know it looks like weird to take this way, but guess what? I'll take a trade of equal value pieces or material anytime I can get it. I'm up a rook. I don't care about this. Rook e1 is the most unfortunate move and easy to fall into because it kind of looks like you're hitting the knight and hitting the pawn behind it. And, that's a long diagonal to be seen. But I think most likely is that you see the e-pawn is hanging and go for that. Lots of pitfalls here. This one is one of them. This one is another one, just because king h2 is such a natural move. But it makes sense that if I'm up a rook, most of the tactics should be working for me and not white. That's just what happens when you're up a rook. Most things on the chessboard, tactic-wise, tend to work for the guy who's up material. Which is why it's really impressive when you see these amazing games, these brilliancy prize games, these studies, these top players. and they have these positions where they're like down a rook but launching a successful attack, those are always super impressive because they're down material, but the tactics are working for them. So it means it was very well calculated and kind of a niche position. Full credit to my opponent. Down a rook, but still struggling here very well. Taking the bishop, which I think is the best move, and then going rook e1. So really good job, I would say. Really good job. f5 holds things together here in terms of the knight, but I would also say a move like knight c5 is not insane, because if the knight takes here, I play f6 and I guarantee myself to trade the rook. So he'll only have a knight left. Pretty easy to win against that. Also, if rook takes, we're happy to trade. So sometimes you can give up a pawn just to guarantee to trade more pieces. When you're up something as significant as a rook, I think that's a very fair game. That being said, I just don't see a problem with f5. Don't lose any material. Objectively the best move in the position. We'll take it. Okay. I am going to bring the king up. Looks like a funny move to, bring the king when there's pieces to get in, but I like bringing the king to f6. There's no knight checks on that square. It's the f6 square is one of the best squares you could be on with a knight on f3. And it guards both of my pawns, and I can always bring this rook here anyway. So for example, if rook d1, to take control of this file, I would play rook d8 without thinking. Takes, takes, yes, I lose a pawn on e5, but we'll do that in a heartbeat. Trade the rooks for the price of one pawn. Done. As will be demonstrated right here. Right? I'm very happy to trade rooks. Yes, I'll lose a pawn, but it's very easy to win a position with a full rook up. So my king g7 move was me saying, look, if you don't play rook d1, I'm going to go king f6, guard my pawn, and then bring the rook there, and you're not going to get anything. So it's like a tough decision for my opponent here. Let's go check, and then we'll go back to d2. So we're attacking this pawn. The knight doesn't really have a way to defend it. We have these covered, so we're going to be winning this, 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 and you see how nasty the rook is. It just picks up all the pawns super easily, which is why we're not worried about losing this pawn, because it's kind of irrelevant. White's pawns are not going to overwhelm my king, pawn, and knight. It won't even overwhelm just my king. So take with check. The king must return to one of those squares. Knight g4 with check. And the nice thing is that after king f3, we don't even need to take the knight. It looks like we do, but rook f2 is mate. So really, I thought we were going to have one of our closest games in the entire series. I really did. But our opponent just went a little bit crazy. Just a little bit. Right? So it was kind of unnecessary. Queen e2, look, not a good move, but this is how good the French is. Even with white playing queen e2 here, queen a4, bishop b5, even doing all this, queen h4, look at the evaluation. My goodness, it's barely better for black. This is what I'm saying. It's like white moved all these queen moves. Like, it feels like they're doing too much, and we're barely better. Like, I would say it's very close to equal. Okay, so here I was well aware that e4 was likely the computer's favorite move, but I knew that it would need something fancy at this point. Because, for example, knight c5 to keep the pawn and intend h6 next, you have to deal with b4. But after b4, maybe bishop e5 wants to happen there. And it's just a lot of calculation. Knight c5, b4, it's like, okay, Well, I have bishop e5. White plays knight c3. Okay, in this position, I have knight a4. You know, and it just gets to be a little bit much. This is a little bit much. To go down a line that's like justified by a move like this later, it's a lot, right? This is what we call an engine line. So it's like, yeah, it was a good move. Our opponent should have played d3, and there's a reason why you definitely want to play d3. But yeah, for rook e8 is a little bit easier. Okay, we played h6, and bishop takes h6 is not the move, right? Knight c3 was needed, bishop d2, knight bd2, just so many moves. It would just be a very close to even game. But here, we just hit him with our client, you know, bishop f8, knight h7. These are the two classic moves to defend the position. Queen f6. And obviously rook e4 was a blunder. Big mistake. And yeah, we were able to just trade pieces and continue from here. So yeah, there's not much to say about the end of the game. But our opponent was giving us a really good game. And then he just played this move. It was so unnecessary. Knight c3. But it's amazing the temptation people feel when they see this. If there's no bishop on the board, light squared bishop, then you're totally fine. Right? Like here I was not concerned. You could sack. And I could give white another move here. And it would still be a bad position. That's how bad the sack is. But even if he did have a light squared bishop there, you know, moves like bishop f8 then become the priority. So hopefully this gave you an idea a little bit how to handle this bishop takes h6 nonsense. Of course, there are certain criteria where bishop takes h6 will work. But the main thing is if somebody sacks against you and you do not have the ability to play knight h7 or bishop f8, for some reason, like those moves aren't possible, I'm not saying it's immediately lost for you, but that would be a good moment for the spidey sense to be tingling and for you to maybe give it another evaluation, give it another calculation. Because those are the situations where the sacks might be very good. If you do have these moves available, then most likely you're fine and you don't need to worry about it.